Hey Greg, how are you doing?
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Think I got everything connected. Where are you tonight?
Burley.
Oh, okay.
We had a class that came up last minute that I was facilitating, and so I came over here on Sunday night, did the class today, and probably hang out in the area, head over to American Falls, and try to make my way home by Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
Well, Stuart's just gonna be here with me.
Yeah.
I've got the, I mean,
Got three bands here. Labor Day, right? Look at the national bands. That's why I sit on my face. There we go. He doesn't see it yet. No, he's okay.
Talk and so the camera will go to you.
So I can't make a meeting, and Sean decides to show up.
Someone's gotta take care of business.
Murphy's Law.
You're looking good, Sean.
So close to how old I was.
Do we have a lot of caller inners?
Yeah, it's like.
Do we have many calling in?
We have some participants on there, yes.
This year though, it was so bad, there wasn't anything else to do, and the skate skiing wasn't any good, so it was some-
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Ready.
All right, it's 5:32 on May 13th, 2024. Welcome to the Bellevue City Regular Council meeting. Please mute your phones. Friendly reminder, please turn off all cell phones except for emergency personnel. Michelle, will you do a roll call?
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
President Giordani,
Yes.
Member Carrero,
Yes.
Member Leahy,
Yes.
Member Mahoney,
Yes.
Member Overdaught. Yes. Member Shan.
Yes.
Thank you. Finding that the regular meeting notice and agenda are posted in accordance with Idaho Code 74204 within 48 hours prior to the meeting at Bellevue City Hall, Post Office, and the city's website, and emailed to Idaho Mountain Express, May 9th, 2024.
I move that the notice for the May 13th, 2024 regular meeting was completed in accordance with Idaho Code, section 74-204.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Call for conflict is outlined in code 74404. Does anybody have any conflict on the council?
No.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna start off with a work session with public comment regarding the city of Bellevue's 2024 drinking water system improvements. We'll take questions, provide answers regarding the water bond. We have Merrick engineers. We do have, did we get EP or did we get DEQ? Okay, I don't see D. And then, do we have anybody from the bond council on? Okay.
I didn't see anybody from home council.
At this time, I will go ahead and open up to public comment. And again, this is just regarding the drinking water system. Nothing on the rest of the agenda.
Does anyone have public comment? Did you open it up for public comment, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone in the room have public comment, or should we move to just having an open discussion? The public comment at this time? Okay.
What's the open discussion as opposed to public comment?
Chris, how would you like to run it? Open discussion as opposed to public comment is the question in the room right now.
All right. It's a little hard for me to lead a discussion if I don't know what people want to talk about specifically. So I will just start with an overview. So there's been some misinformation put out on this and some different misunderstandings. So this project, it follows a 2022 sanitary survey that was done by DEQ. What they do is every 5 years, they go around to water systems. They look at their wells, their springs, whatever part of their systems, and they do an evaluation on, are things being done in compliance? Are things being done properly? Are there any chances of contamination to the water system due to natural causes or potential hazards? And we went through this in July around 2022, I think. We had some significant deficiencies, primarily up at our our spring site. We did have a couple at our well sites. mainly just the handling of chlorine gas that wasn't even being used at the time. But we fixed all the small stuff now. It comes down to issues with the aged infrastructure of the spring collection. And then there's also a couple other opportunities that we are trying to save money on with Idaho Department of Transportation coming in, doing some work on Highway 75. We have some projects there that have undersized water mains. To get into IDAPA compliance, we need to increase the diameter of those pipes. And it gives us better fire protection and provides better delivery. The spring collection, it's a series of weir boxes and pipes and valves. There's actually 3 or 4 springs on the total system. We've seen some of the pictures we shared at the last open house. You can see the deterioration of the concrete at some of the boxes. It just needs to be improved. The pipeline that runs along, that carries from the collection to the main water tank, roughly 2-3 miles, currently runs through Idaho property. And to have better access for making repairs, and a part of an agreement that when the system was put in, that if any construction were to happen on it, it would be removed off the property. We are running the main line down the county road where we can have an easement and access to our water right. This will help with a few different things. A, give us access. B, the pipeline that's in there, again, close to 40 years old, if not older. We anticipate there is quite a bit of water loss there. And so by updating the piping, putting in a new main, we're actually going to be saving quite a bit of water that can actually be put into our water tank, and again reduces the need that we have for using our wells. Our wells, all the water right now is testing great. We have no issues as far as water quality. This is primarily to improve our water quantity and our sustainability for the next 40 years. And then just a few things to get us back in full compliance with the EQ on our system. The bond, so far we got acquired. I'm going to say this, we have the grant funds from a leading Idaho fund grant, which were $3.3 million to actually secure those. Have I froze?
We can hear you, Chris.
Okay. I think we lost city council though.
Yeah, it looks like we did.
There was a huge lightning strike just now,
Yeah.
Oh.
Mr. Mayor.
No, there's been a bad storm here in
Wow.
early.
Looks like we lost somebody else too.
They lost power and they're getting back online.
Okay.
Am I doing all right so far?
Yeah, it's
Great.
Great summary. Catching everybody up to speed, so.
Take two.
All right. How far did we get? Had I switched over to the bond?
Not the monetary side of it.
Okay. Where? So I think I explained exactly where I ended with explaining of the project as a whole, but again, that's primarily improving the delivery system at the spring system to ensure that we have long-term sustainability and we can cover some water losses and get back into compliance with DEQ. Moving on to the bonding side, we have been awarded, and it's a package deal. It's not like we can take half of it or not. $3.3 million was awarded through a Leading Idaho Fund grant on the contingency that we secure the rest of the funds needed to complete the project. I think the project total is 9.6 million, 9.8 million, right in there. We've asked for 7 million just to make sure that we have enough overhead in case of price increases. Right now, piping is fluctuating a bit. A few other things, the availability of materials and cost could have some fluctuation. So we want to make sure that we had a little bit of a buffer so we didn't have to come back and ask for extra funds. So there are several different funding opportunities throughout Idaho. This is going through what's called the state revolving fund. The loan that we take, if the bond is approved, will be what's the term? Drawdown. And so as we start doing the project, we're going to use the $3.6 million for the initial startup and the initial phases of the project. When we use that money, we'll start going to the loan and we'll be pulling out only what we need for the time of the project. So we're anticipating this to be at least a 2, potentially 3-year project. So it's not like we're going to see our rates go up overnight. So December 31st, you paid $30, and now come January, you're going to expect to be paying $65. No, it'll slowly increase as we start drawing on the loan, and we'll keep people aware of what's going on. And if we do use the full term, yes, our rates could go up from $30 to $65. This is still, fairly inexpensive water when you look at price per gallon on typical home use. We are trying to find other grants. I have asked Congressman Simpson's office for a earmark. We've gotten a few that were passed the last couple of years to help other Idaho systems, and we're hoping that we should find out in the spring where that is, and that money can go offset the loan balance. The one nice thing about the loan, it is at a 2.5% interest rate. And again, we only pay on what we're using at the time. So we're not going to be taking out a whole $7 million and just letting it sit and pay interest on it. We are going to be drawing on it as needed, and we'll see what we have to pay at that time. I work in the water and wastewater, and I help systems around the state trying to find the best funding they can. We use rural development is one entity that we go through. DEQ and the SRF is another. There are a few other options that we can look at, but in my opinion, this is one of the best funding packages that I've seen come to a community in the last 5 years that I've been doing this. So I think it's well worth you taking the time to look at it, understand what we're actually trying to do, why we need the funding, and continue to provide Bellevue with a sustainable long-term source of water that can't be curtailed through the Big Wood Ground Management Plan. Any questions or any comments from either council members or people in the gallery?
Mayor Johnson, I'll kind of be your eyes in here for you.
Thank you.
I have Tammy Davis with her hand raised, so Tammy, if you'd like to just state your name and where you live for comments.
Tammy Davis, 300 South Fifth Street, Bellevue. I just had a question about how, and I thought that it was great, but how do we get and are we secured for a 2.5% interest? Like, do we have a letter of commitment that says we're secured to receive those funds at that rate? And how?
So these funds, and for what it's, the type of bond it is for a revenue bond, DEQ, they receive funding from EPA for state revolving funds, and they secure them, and then they pass them out through an application process, and so they control the rate. It's not like going to a bank and securing a loan from, like on a typical bond, going to Zion or another large bank that's going to fund the loan. This is funded through government money. It gets paid back to DQ, and so it can be used in the future for other projects. This is how they're able to keep it at 2.5%. It helps systems and communities like ours not have the burden of extra interest on taking on a full-on loan.
And is there a letter of commitment? Is there a letter of commitment?
Is there a letter of commitment, Mayor Johnson?
There's a letter in the packaging offer once the bond is passed that we'll have it stated that 2.5 is the locked-in interest rate through the project.
So Mayor Johnson, can I go ahead and tag on to your
Please.
answer? So the answer is yes. There is a preliminary letter of commitment, which is coming through an offer. So right now there are several steps that have to be taken. We've completed a lot of those steps along working with your city. So the proposed loan terms from DEQ in writing is 20 years at a 2.5 fixed interest rate. And so the final step to actually secure that, those terms in that agreement is that the city would have to either pass a revenue bond or seek judicial confirmation prior to July 1st of this year. That is part of the draft offer that is in place right now, according to DEQ.
Thank you, Christina. So I apologize. So we have Gregory Dye, Christina Gillespie Jakes, and Stuart. I forget your last name. I apologize, but they are our engineering team at Americ. Christina works she works with systems to help with the funding, and then both Greg and Stuart are engineers. And I think we may have lost them.
No, we're here, Chris.
Any questions from the council?
I have one question. The one thing that I was going over in this proposal that I didn't see here, but I think it's important for people to consider. It was a few months ago that the lawyer Water Rights, was that who that was here, was talking about if we had a natural disaster or if the wells dried up, if there was a drought, how important the spring system is for us. Is there a reason why that isn't in here and why the importance in having access to the spring?
Mayor Johnson, did you hear that?
Yeah, I think it's been part of the overall discussion. So Chris Bromley came in. Chris Bromley with McKean Bromley are our water attorneys. They are helping us through the Big Wood Groundwater Management Plan. And what this does, if we do not have the spring source, we're relying 100% on the wells. Now, right now, to drill another well to meet the capacity demands that we do have, we're still looking at a couple $1 million project minimum. And the problem with that, drilling a new well, we'll have very junior water rights. So if the Big Wood Ground Management Plan stays the way it is, and it's looking like it'll be somewhat close to what they've done for the last 3 years, anytime there's a water call from senior water rights users down on Lincoln County through the Littlewood, we could have our well shut down, curtailed would be the term. That leaves us with no options other than the spring. If we have the spring source, we have a senior water right, and they cannot curtail a surface water right like the spring. They can only curtail from the groundwater pumpers due to the current agreement. So max daily consumption roughly for the city of Bellevue in the summertime when everybody's irrigating their lawns, we're using about 200 gallons, 2 million gallons a day, 2 million gallons a day. Is that right, Bryce, or is it? Yeah, I'm gonna say 2 million gallons a day. And if you look at our spring right, it alone, it can provide the city of Bellevue like 198,000 gallons of water a day. Combined with the two wells, one is about the same. It's maybe a little bit more, maybe it's right at that 2 million. And then the other one is actually a fairly small right, about 750,000 gallons. Also by DEQ and IDAPA, we're required to have a backup water source. So the spring functions as this. A, it's our primary since it produces the cheapest water for us. We don't have to turn on our pumps. And then B, it sets the amount of water that we need. It gives us basically double the water that we currently use. Now, some of that water usage, we know we have a lot of water losses throughout the system. I know many of you are upset the fact that we have meters in the ground and we're still not paying a metered rate. I'm working with our operators and our team to finish up the meter project. We've just approved a couple months ago or a few weeks ago at a council meeting. The software packages needed to read and do the billing for those. It's our intent to be able to start reading meters by the end of the summer and get that program in place, which will, one, help us isolate water losses around town. B, you're paying for what you use. So we'll have I'm not sure if we've really talked about the rate structure and how that's going to look, but you'll have a flat rate for X amount of gallons. And then above that, whoever uses more water will be charged additional fees for additional water usage. So those of you that are conserving water, or you're single, like my wife and I, there's only 2 of us in our home. We're going to be probably well under that flat rate limit. Other people that have more family members, larger families, that have a garden, that water their lawn, they're going to be paying more for water because they're going to be using more water. So it brings it to a fair system. And I'm not sure if we'll actually be paying the rates come winter. Typically, we like to give homeowners and water users the winter time to see what their domestic use is. So we're not talking about any irrigation, but just what you're using in your house. And so we'll do that over the winter months, and then come April 1st, you know what your winter rates were, and then you can adjust as you see fit for your landscaping needs. Is that kind of hit what you wanted to talk about?
Yes, that was me. Yep, that answered all my questions. Thank you.
I've got another hand in the room.
I was just curious, everybody has a meter, is that correct? All the homes that are water users, so when you turn on the meters, there's parity, right? There aren't any homes that will not be metered, is that right, or businesses?
I think we still have a few to put in, but I believe that we're at about 85% or better meters installed. The last couple of years, with the amount of construction going, it's been difficult to find excavation companies to help install the last couple of years. But we will start working that. And even there's been a long-term debate about, oh, we need to get all the meters in before we start doing this. We're never going to have all the meters in. We're always going to have new builds coming in. We're always going to, we'll eventually get there, but it's not my intent to continue to push this off. We can still have them pay their flat rate that they currently do, but everybody that's on a meter will be paying a metered rate, and that flat rate will be the baseline basically of what you get to use. And then if you go beyond that baseline fee, you'll start seeing more. So for the most part, they are all in, and we are working hard to get the last of them in. So it is a fair and just equitable.
So 15% will have whatever water they want, and 85% will pay on a different system. Is that right? Roughly right now? Is that what you're saying?
If I were
I'm
turning,
just trying to get the info.
if I were turning it on today, yes, I think we're about there. We may be closer to 90%. So 10 will be paying what they do right now, and they can use all the water they want. The rest of us are gonna have a base allotment and be paying more.
And all new development requires meters, is that right?
Didn't hear that one.
The question was, does all new development require meters?
Yes, all the new developments are getting meter boxes as they are getting connected.
Thank you.
Jeff
Jeff Batley has his hand up.
Jeff Papley has his hand up.
Sorry,
Hi,
I'm
Jeff
sorry.
Hafley. Normally I don't bring no cards, but I didn't want to forget anything. So actually taking time to ask people that have come to me with questions about the situation here. I've tried to do some research with the contacts that I had. So some of the questions that came up that I think there's, answers for. Is it not true that basically the city and the landowner and the DEQ at this point in time have inherited a situation that really developed back in the early 2000s when the city needed to negotiate with previous landowner to secure its streams, and deal in which when any major reconstruction of the lines occurred, that the landowner then had the right to ask the city to remove it from their property.
Correct. So the whole agreement, it wasn't done between necessarily the city and the landowners, and definitely it was done prior to the current landowner, but it's actually written in the water right itself. It's tied to the water right, and so DEQ was the one that researched it, found out that it was tied to the water right. It's just not a friendly handshake between ranchers and the city. It's a legal document that was processed by Idaho Department of Water Resources, and we're bound to it. So this allows us to remove this infrastructure off private property, put it into an easement along the county, so we have full access to our source and to our I guess be the collection line that goes to the tank if there were any damages, any leaks, or anything that need to be replaced. Yes, sir.
So let's call this an inherited situation of which the DEQ is here. It's come to a point in time, I believe, 20 years or so, where any other options, whether they've been explored or not, have not been pursued. And now we're at a point in time where the DEQ, in a sense, now this is the purpose of the bond, in many major processes, you have to provide proof of funds. And in a sense, the bond is the proof of funds. And when you do that, then the rest of the process can occur. And it's my understanding that the DEQ basically, even if you wanted to extend it, they pretty much in a meeting said, no, not after July 1st. Is that correct?
That is correct. With the funding options, what happens, they come out annually. Systems put in what's called a letter of interest. They state what their project is and estimated cost. And so we have said that this is our project. It is basically shovel ready. And they granted us this money. But if we do not get the funding secured, it goes back into the pot and it'll go to the next system.
Okay, so another question. There's been concern that if the city were to pass its bond for $7 million, that it could be spent anyway within, the city wanted to do. Is that incorrect? Isn't it pretty much, it's a government contract, it's very much controlled. All those monies stay strictly for the water service, can't be used for anything else. Is that correct?
Correct. Everything has to be laid out in the scope of a work that it gets final acceptance and we can't deter from that. There might be some options to, if we see another challenge in the system, if we see a greater need or a priority, we may be able to move it to specifically address that issue, but it would still be 100% on the water project or what we saw. I mean, if we see something as we're doing excavation or as we're moving the pipe or something, like recently, here's a good example. 6 weeks ago, maybe, we found out that our main valve that controls the water coming from the collection, from the spring system to the tank, had failed. We were able to put it into a position where it still fills the tank and gives enough back pressure to provide water up to Idaho and their water right. But I was thinking, okay, $5,000-6,000 for a valve. That's about a $50,000 valve. I was able to secure, or we did ask the county to provide some ARPA funding, and I think that's being negotiated right now. But if something like that size and that critical to the water system were to occur while we're doing this project, we might be able to move funds around a little bit, but pretty much everything needs to be laid out in the scope of work. We need to follow the scope of work and submit the documentation on what we're doing with the money.
Other question?
Yes.
So this is a separate account strictly for water, couldn't be used for the sewer. But does the public during the course of this construction, do they have access if they chose to the expenses or how the monies have been paid?
Yeah. I don't see why not. I mean, we'll have to keep records of it. If at one point people want to audit it and see it, I mean, we're going to be audited every year. It's part of the process with city government to see where our money is going, where we spent it, and that can be requested. I don't see any reason why at any point somebody couldn't see where the money's going. It can't be used on sewer, it can't be used on streets, other than potentially if we replaced a water line that was under a paved road and we have to repave the road, that would be in part of the scope of work though. So this is dedicated to a water project. It's not going into any other capital projects or any other side projects. It is dedicated to this one project that is outlined in the facility plan.
Question.
Just gonna let Jeff.
Take a breath.
Just let Jeff go.
No. No, is your question related to, piggybacked on that last question?
No.
Okay, Jeff, I'm
So,
like, do your one more.
with regards to that, you had mentioned loss of water. And in talking to a hydrologist that I've had 34 years of experience with, when I shared with him what I thought was the amount of water that was lost, his opinion, and tell me if this is correct or not, was that if you secure the water you were losing, basically within the same system, you have the ability to generate more hookups, collect more monthly fees. That would create more revenues to support your water system, which otherwise would be lost. And I mean, he actually said if you looked at it in terms of a 20-year period for each hookup, collectively, this could be millions of dollars, which actually, would have been lost, which could, in theory, be, offset in the perceived cost of what was being constructed. Do you feel that's true or not?
No, I do believe that is a true statement. We do have significant water loss, and it's part of this package, and we've stated in the plan to do leak detection and to curtail or find these leaks to reduce our losses. We know in the past, we've talked about this a bit, the water coming from the spring to the tank really doesn't affect our water pressure, but the leaks throughout the rest of the system. So when it leaves the tank and then it gets distributed to the houses, those leaks could have a significant effect on our water pressure that has been brought up as a concern by many people. So by going after using this money to find some leaks, get the meters hooked up so we can better identify them. We're improving our water savings. It'll give us the ability to create additional revenue and could potentially fix some of the pressure issues around town.
That's Suzanne.
I think that Christina needed the opportunity to finish answering Tammy's question about the full 7 million. Tammy specifically asked about the guarantee at 2.5%. And I believe that that only covers 6.3 million. So I think Christina just needed to give her the remaining information about the legal basis for the 700,000.
The seven, the additional
Yeah,
700,000.
the anticipated interest rate on the ballot.
Christina,
Yeah.
Did you gather that question from there?
I did. So, so the offer as it reads right now is about $6.3 million in state revolving fund loans. And then there's a Leading Idaho Fund grant in a little over $3.3 million. The terms are 20 years on the loan, 2.5% fixed interest rate. The total package that has been offered by DEQ is $9.6 million. We have chatted with DEQ many times. We have worked with many communities who sometimes they do have an overage in projects. And so DEQ has money that they have set aside for those, sometimes those project cost overruns. As far as the question on a legal basis, I am not an attorney and I cannot answer that question. I would defer that to your city attorney if he is in the audience to answer that question.
Sorry, just the documentation that she referred to. She asked specifically about a guarantee for the 2.5%, and you identified a document for 6.3. And I think it's okay to just tell her we don't have it for the remaining amount, but we're hopeful. Is that the answer?
From what I understand, Christina, the question is on the delta of the $7 million bond we're going for and the 6.3 that's been committed by DEQ. If we were to need the additional 700,000, at what rate would we be borrowing it at, or do we not know the information at this time?
We do not know the information at this time, but just as Chris stated in one of, the several times that he's been on the screen tonight, these funds for this entire fiscal year for the SRF funds are at 2.5% interest rate. So we can estimate, or we can propose that that's likely going to be the interest rate that DEQ would adhere to. When we have done this before in the past on other projects, and when there's been a funding amendment that includes additional SRF funding, that interest rate is tied to the fiscal year of which the award is agreed upon. Okay, so we have seen this in the past. They have not fluctuated their interest rate when we go back to them maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, because DEQ has monies that they specifically set aside for things like this. We could propose, we could estimate that would be the remaining 700,000 would be at 2.5 interest rate. But we will have to have those discussions if we come to that.
Rick would like to weigh in, our attorney.
So if we are forced to go through a judicial confirmation for this funding, what will our interest rate be for that?
It should be the same because it's still the same financial package that we would be getting if we go through the judicial review process. It's not like we're going through we're getting more money from somewhere else if we go that direction. It's just a different avenue to pursue it.
It's the
And we
missing
still
word
have
for
access
the
to the
mechanism.
grant money as well, we go through judicial confirmation.
Yeah, it's that entire funding package we would be asking for would be the same.
That's correct. We've had those discussions with DEQ on if the bond fails and the city were to seek a judicial confirmation. This is the funding package that they would still hold, as long as the judicial confirmation could be completed before July 1. July 1 is the cutoff date because that is the next federal the next state fiscal year begins on that date. So Bellevue has been working on this for a little while now, for several months. And just how all of this works out, there's a May election, and DEQ is all but waiting for the results of the bond election to see what happens.
So I just have one last question, but I need to just comment about this interest rate thing. Even if that $700,000 was, say, 5%, the effective rate for the whole thing still is about 2.6 or 7%, which is extremely good. And in fairness, there should be some, there should be accounting of the interest that would be included on a $3.3 million loan. And if you do that, then the effective rate is actually under 2%. So
Just a little correction, $3.3 million grant.
excuse me, the 3 point, yeah. Normally that money would carry interest. If you actually put that all in there, and you looked at it against the whole $10 million, $9.6 million work that's being done, it computes to under 2%. But my final question was, there's been concern about easements and other properties that might be affected. Is it not true that whether it's in, well, my own subdivision, I have easements all over the place for utility. It's basically a utility. It's very common to have easements on property. They basically, the lines or whatever go underground, it's covered up. And that's pretty much the end of it. Are you envisioning that there would be any more inconvenience to someone other than that initial event? And then it would be just pretty much like easements exist, public easements exist throughout the nation?
I don't foresee any issues with the easement, because while we'll be doing additional work in the collection area, everything else will be running along the county road. It's not going to be crossing properties. It's not going to be condemning anybody's land, anything like that. It's just the access way that'll bring it right down. We're not going to go in and dig up all that old pipe. There's no reason to. We're just going to change the connections, and one day we'll be pulling from one pipe and the next day we'll be pulling from another that we actually have access and control over. And it should not interfere with anybody's property or property rights.
So is it true that if Idaho decided that they did not want to make these easements and any private property, or they drove up the price to 2 million, or Bellevue didn't want to, so are we prepared to accept whatever price they set? And are we prepared to seize their land if they're not interested in the agreement?
We've been working with the property owner. He owns a right on this line, so he has an interest in making sure that his ranch gets their domestic water use. He is not he is in support of the project because he knows the dated age of the infrastructure and the value to the community as a whole, not just one property. He understands that this affects what, 2,600 people, 2,600 people in our population right now. I mean, we have 1,100 connections, and he's not going to hold this up for one.
So you have an agreement, is what you're saying, and we have a set amount. It's not estimated any longer.
We do not have any agreement or any set amount, but we've had discussions, and he is willing to work with us. I mean, he's not going to be losing any property. It's going to be all underground. So he's not losing anything out of this deal. There might be one or two structures that aren't even going to be noticeable. So his interests align with the city's interest, and it's about supporting the community's water supply.
Mr. Patrick?
Okay, I need to put an end to sort of this fear, because I know the property owner. I've talked to him about it. He is very interested in, I mean, he could have pushed this. he hasn't been, he's been cooperative, he's been agreeable to leave the lines, you know, under the property. He is not looking to extract money from the city at all. And in the long run, if it came down to appraisals of what that truly is, that would end his ability just to name a number. So this is not a very accurate portrayal of what could happen.
Just to clarify, there are lawsuits starting in Sun Valley based on the state's appraisals of property for the easements on the properties along 75, but well beyond that, is there any truth to the rumors that Idaho is hoping to get everything off to prepare for development out there? Or possible sale of the property for development? Not.
I have not heard of any developments or any plan on sale of that.
So no discussions with the city about that so far?
I've had absolutely no discussions with the city. The only developments that the city has been that I'm aware of are the Oppenheimer properties and then the Steadfast properties at the south. Nothing of Idaho or Muldoon Canyon.
I'm gonna call on Jim Williams, you had your hand up.
So, was there an appraisal done to get that an estimated value for what the property will cost?
Have we gotten that far, Christina?
I'm just curious how the estimate was.
Well, he said he doesn't care. Please, right.
What I said is, he's not looking to get any monies per se from the city. He's just interested in having the lines that the city agreed to move at a certain point removed from his property. Now, as far as whether he developed it or not, it has nothing to do with your need to fix your water source and your transmission lines to a source. You only have the rights to the source. You don't necessarily have the rights to how you get there. So this whole thing will, you know, help secure your rights for perpetuity. And one of the reasons that I got from the Oppenheimers, why they wanted to bail partially into Haley, was concern over this whole situation. So you are losing tax revenues in many different ways.
Okay, but just to clarify, so that $1 million line item, it sounds like in the plan for the easements is not of interest to the Idaho people.
You'll have to ask him. I'm only repeating what he told me.
Okay. Well, it's a large number and we're paying money on it.
There'll be a great, you know,
I wanna put up just a quick pause. Mayor Johnson, I wanna see if we can get Christina from Merrick online about this.
Hi, I'm gonna defer to Stuart on this question.
Yeah, so again, there's been discussions, but there's been no, official land assessments completed to date.
So where did we come up with the $1 million figure? I think that's what Suzanne trying to get at.
Yeah, so that was an estimate that was put together just based on, the estimated area of the work that's going to be done, the easements, and then also, just again with past negotiations and just open discussions, with the landowner. But again, nothing is locked in or no official assessments have been made.
I have a hand up with Jim Williams.
What if it appraises for higher?
Did you hear that
What if it
question?
appraises for higher than the
That's why
estimate?
that's why we have some of the overage in play. But again, what if it doesn't cost us anything and then we don't have to use that 1,000 and now we're only borrowing 5.8 million.
What role will developers and development impact fees in paying back this $7 million?
No developers. I mean, there will be developments that will benefit it in the long term, but right now this is not about providing extra water for the developers. It's securing the long-term sustainability of our current residents. Now they will continue to pay the hookup fees and the development impact fees, but nothing specific as far as this project.
But we just heard from Jeff that this is one of the reasons why Oppenheimer's was leaning towards Haley.
But
So I can't believe that they aren't gonna benefit from it. And I'm wondering what role will they have in paying that back?
it's a rule of numbers for
Let
everybody.
me clarify what I said though.
Okay.
Their concern was the availability and security of the water here in Bellevue. And because of that, they wanted to protect their development in part, because there was a sewer issue heading to Haley. I know for a fact, because people ask me as I'm trying to sell or market my properties, the water issue does come up. And it does bring people to pause about the access or the dependability of water and its future availability. So I'm not creating, the concern, it's there.
It gets paid back for hookup fees and your monthly bill, so it's, those developments come in and people hook up to the water system. Part of that goes to paying off then their monthly fees, so that's the more people you get paying into the system, the less your rates.
I was just gonna,
So will that monthly rate drop as new development comes on?
Yes,
It's not gonna be locked in at the $37 a month or.
the more people that you have paying for the water, right now you only have, let's say, 1,000 people. If you have 2,000 people, you're still paying off the same loan, but you're doing it with 1,000 people, 2,000 people.
So it's written in this whole thing that we're voting on, that we have potential to be paying less than that per month as new development comes in.
Yeah.
so Jim, I'd like to just say, I look at the water bill rates as variable, right? The rates will change, like we're discussing incrementally. I do want to draw the attention back and have a question for Christina though, because with this being a revenue bond, I think there are boundaries upon how we can pay back the bond, and I would just love a little clarification on that, Christina.
So Councilwoman, could you restate your question in a different way?
I just, when, in the past, when we've been discussing, a revenue bond and how it is paid back, we've been discussing about how it's paid back through, the fees in which we charge for water rates. Are there any alternative ways, like Jim Williams is discussing with, charging developers or development impact fees? Is that within the bounds of how we could pay back a bond, or do we have stipulations on how we can pay off this debt?
I'm not gonna have a good answer for you, and I'm really sorry. We were hoping that Holly Troxel would be online tonight to take on all of those very specific legal questions. But yes, it will be, they're fundamentally, you have an ordinance, you have a bond ordinance that's been passed. And it will be a note. It's a specific document that if the bond does pass there and you draw on that loan, you will have to pay it back. So it's a bond anticipation note. There's a lot of legal, so many legal terminology and all of those things. And so I apologize. I do not have an answer to that question. That would be one that we would need to address with Danielle Quaid.
But as it sounds like, if we get another 200, 500 customers, and we have an excess of revenue coming in from fees, we can either pay off the loan sooner, so we have less interest, or we reduce the rates and keep them balanced and keep them fair. I mean, it's all about where our budget is. It's not like we're using this to gain additional revenue. We're always going to have to gain additional revenue for future projects. And we looked at the project list. We went with the lowest sets of projects that get us back into compliance with DEQ. So we're going for the minimum amount we can do to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success. There's still, I don't have the document in front of me, but we still have millions of other dollars in projects that need to go. So yes, we will be taking in revenue fees. As we collect them, we are paying off the bond, but we also have to look at, as we get more connections and more funds coming in, what other fixes do we still have to do? I mean, we're going to continue to have leaks. We're going to continue to see Highway 75. I'm hearing in 2025 they could be resurfacing all of 75 through Bellevue. Now that'd be a great time to do any additional fixes on the pipelines there. But water money has to stay with water. I can't take water money and go spend it on streets or spend it on parks. That will continue to stay, and it'll be up on the month or on the annual budget on, okay, where are our rates at? Where are our revenues at? Are we taking in too much? Can we cut them down? That'll be on the councils to follow us.
Suzanne?
What were the other companies that bid on this particular project? Not the original creation of the plan, but on this particular project?
Are you talking about an engineering firm?
Yeah, engineering firm.
I think we had, let's see. We put it out, we have 5 on-call consulting firms that we use, that we don't necessarily have to go to RFPs on all the time, but those that were involved with this one, I believe were, it was Merrick. At that time, it was Mountain Great West. No, sorry, Mountain Waterworks. And then who'd we have before with, we had Keller and Associates. They put in a request, and we were still working with them on the sewer at that time. And theirs was a little higher, and I forget which third company. I think it may have been Jorgensen, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. We could look back through the council minutes, but or I know we had to do. What happened is we had 4 presentations come in. We reviewed them all, and then with the funding, we looked at the work that they have done in the past. We looked at the revenues, like grants and funding sources they were able to collect. And out of the 4 or 5 that proposed, we ranked them, and we feel like we've got the best engineering team on this project for what it is.
Thank you. So are there any limitations, since Merrick has brought in the funding? If we had a falling out with them, are we still tied to them, or can we keep the money and get another firm?
Right now, the project start is based off of the ability to acquire the funds. After we sign a full contract with them, it might be a little harder to break ties with them, to say, but it happens all the time throughout the state. If we feel that we aren't getting taken care of, they haven't met part of their agreement, or we're not meeting our end of the agreement, I believe there is, and tell me if I'm wrong, Christina, there is some sort of mutual cancellation clause. You're muted still, Christina.
Sorry about that. Wow. I apologize. Yes, there's a mutual clause. We can go ahead and rescind, our services. There's a clause there. That's typically for cause, so failure to pay, those types of things. But actually the city has much more latitude, just as Chris was saying, the mayor was saying, because we are a hired consultant to do the project as stated in the scope of work. And so we have those clauses in the contract. And the money stays with the city. The money, it doesn't go to Christina, it doesn't go to Merrick. The agreement is between the state of Idaho and the city of Bellevue.
Thank you.
That was a good question.
And I think we saw that draft agreement in a couple of packets ago.
Yeah, there is in one of the older packets, there is
Yeah.
the agreement that Merrick brought to us and all the jargon in there
No,
for
I
you.
read it.
Okay.
To tag on to Jim's question, regarding rates or, not being set. Do you happen to know if all of your water sources were operating at 100%? Does anybody know how many units, residential units, commercial units could be served as opposed to what's being served today? I mean, maybe you're operating at half capacity and then you could add more people, or as growth occurred, add more hookups. And certainly that would seem that the rates would stabilize or potentially come down, or that bond would go away more quickly. Do you have an answer?
Yes, and Shane or Bryson may be able to back me up a little bit more on this, but if we had all our water production running 100% and we were using, or we were able to gather 100% of our water rights, we're looking at about 4.5 million gallons of water a day that could be produced. Now, that doesn't really transition necessarily to a number of connections or a number of homes we could actively serve, because we do have that requirement to have a backup water source. So if we take that 4.5, divide it by 2, we could be pushing 2.5 million a daily water use. But we know that's not all going to customers. There's a lot of water loss out there that we can improve on. And so we're probably only serving domestic use on, say, 1.5 million at peak annual summer flows. So we have the potential to go to 3. So we could easily add roughly 500 to 1,000 connections if we needed to with our current water rights, if we had it optimal and we had our leaks and we weren't just losing water.
I have another question.
Suzanne.
Concerning the infrastructure and that, so if I don't dispute that a project like this costs us much money with all your elements, and I think there's almost nobody in Bellevue that disputes the need for this water project. We still have 3 million outstanding loan for the sewer at $90 a sewer a month for your sewer rates, right? And now in 3 years, because I think it's very reasonable, and it'll probably be more, to expect this project to come in at its full capacity with all the money spent, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, that always happens in everything. You take your car to the shop and it's more. So you do that, and we're now in 3 years at $10 million because we're struggling to pay down the sewer debt or what have you. So now we're at $10 million. And we can't even get rid of the sewer debt because we're still trying to pay that off. I don't know where that money goes to. I'm not suggesting you guys do either. But so then what's next? And I'm not disputing that this is an extraordinary challenge. Roads, this opportunity was 6.3, the beauty of this package, absolutely. But we also have to deal with the stench that we're emitting from the sewer. The fact that the sewer, we can't let the water out. How are we moving forward when we're spending money like this that we don't have? Even at these beautiful packages, it's a $9+ million undertaking. So it's right now, Bellevue's under 10 million.
Okay.
Then we say, oh
You're-
my God,
You're adding the grocery cart when half of it's already being taken care of. We have the bond on the sewer. We are paying it down. We pay, I don't know, 150,000 or biannually to pay that down. Okay, how much is it, Shelley? How much do we pay our annual payment on the sewer
I'm
bond?
ready tomorrow to make a $205,000 payment twice a year
Right.
on the sewer. The sewer pays for that.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Sewer
got
pays for
that, but there's other sewer work to do that we can't pay for. That I think is right. So I don't know what that, I'm sorry not to dispute your numbers, but yes.
We're already looking at other funding options for the sewer plant. That's part of this whole process of working with engineers, working with rural development, finding the money out there to reduce the cost to our residents. Now, it's unfortunate that, when that plant was put in, people hit the start button and failed to maintain it the way it properly should have. I mean, the membranes out there were supposed to be replaced every 10 years. They hadn't been replaced from the time it was put in till the time I got to council, and we started looking at it and saying, we need to fix this. All right. Now we have some other issues, some other challenges down there, and we're working through that, but that's not here nor there. We always know there's going to be more needs for the city. There's going to be more needs for the roads improvement. This is why we're doing the transportation study, so we can start applying for more grants and more funding opportunities there. This is how city government works. We try to find as much money as we can, because I know everybody doesn't want to see their rates increase every year to pay for another project, but I do know they want services. And so we are actively trying to find the best services and the best way to fund these. It is unfortunate that everything is doubling in price since COVID. With the cost of oil, it just raises the cost of everything in water and wastewater system, because now basically everything is plastic based. We are stuck between a rock and a hard spot, and we can continue to patch things together. We can put band-aids on them and then limp it around until we have the next emergency where we need more money, or we can go into large funding projects like this, get ahead of the problems, start working on developing a staff and a team that takes ownership of it. So we're actually doing preventive maintenance, which is cheaper than it is to do all these replacements. We are here because 40 years we have neglected to do the proper maintenance on this water system. We thought we could just let it go. It'll be there forever. You know, our water comes in and our pool water goes out. Great, happy. But that's not the case anymore. If we don't start getting ahead of these projects, they're just going to cost us more money down in the long term. And it could be a critical failure where we don't have the ability to use our lagoons or, you know, divert our sewer system and take care of treatment as best as we can right now. I mean, we're lucky that we have a solid team with Bryson and Shane and even Great West engineers down there on looking at options on how do we reduce the odor down there? What more do we have to apply to do it? How do we stay within our permit? Those are challenges that we work on every week. We don't want people to be calling the commissioners saying it stinks down there. We're trying to do our best. But back on topic, this is the water. This is the water project and the water bond. The sewer one you'll be seeing soon enough. And I hope I can come
That's
up.
the point, I think that's the point, that's the point. 7 million here, 7 million here. How about some austerity here? 5 million, you had a great deal out there, and I don't know if it could work this way, but if it's a bond initiative, then could we have done 5 million water bond? 1.3 for the sewer and try and get some support there, maybe even turn some of that money to cut down on that excessive interest rate or what have you. I guess I'm just asking, you know, I don't want to live in the city with the credit card. I already have that problem at home. I'm making a minimum payment, and it just goes on, and it limits your possibilities and your opportunities down the road. And Chris, I think you guys are doing a tremendous job trying to do this, but you've shut out through simply maybe the mechanisms of how the city hall is structured at this point, some of the more critical financial thinking and opportunities, and utilizing some members of the community to do some of this stuff and assist with the financial. I have to suggest to you that not collecting the fees immediately is a mistake. You could stockpile 2 years in a freaking American Express high yield savings at 4.35%. We could make money to pay off some of the stuff during that period. So some of this is lacking from your plan and your process. And it's a lot for anyone, especially basically a volunteer leadership group, to contend with all on your own. And I think that is our concern as a community, is that you rush into the fray and you're lacking some significant broader vision on things that maybe should have been there. And now we're rushing towards May saying it's 7 million or bust. It's now we forced you out and you're at the market and great. And still we're not dealing with the nitty-gritty. And again, I think your leadership, what you've been trying to do is spot on, and we're seeing more now than we've seen for a while, certainly, but we're struggling. It's the sewer bond. It's like, oh, well, we gotta spend money, let's bundle. Oh my God, we can't afford to bundle. We have to wait. And you wanna look for the more money? Great, let's pay off the other. You're gonna get more money? Fabulous. Let's take that and pay off, and let's issue another bond, and let's get it. But you can't, and we hope there's gonna be, I mean, you can say it, but how about we not say, I hope there's gonna be more money. I mean, look at freaking McCall is a $16 million project. It's gonna cost them $24 million because they can't get any of this, and they're not hoping that they can. They are looking at a $24 million project that they're 50% in payments over what they've got, and we're rapidly going towards that. We've got 10 million in 2 years in this with the sewer bond still. And then we're saying there's gonna be another bond coming. Well, where does it stop? I guess is and that's where I think the fiscal, and reducing the size of the project, Chris, not that I in any way doubt your acumen and what you're trying to accomplish, but the methodology I think is lacking. And that's really, so not to disparage your efforts, I know they've been tremendous, but there are pieces missing.
I appreciate it. It's just the methodology of the city has always been kick it down the road, put a Band-Aid on it. Let's don't really address it until it becomes a problem. And now it's become a problem. I mean, we can look at all the other options. Yeah, we could raise the rates and pocket and bankroll that money into something like that. But now we're paying 65 right off the get-go. Here we're trying to slowly help people get into a financial situation if they are on a limited income or a fixed income, ease them into it versus bam, you're now doubled your water rates. There are a lot of opportunities out there. I think we've had a good discussion tonight. We'll continue to look for money. I continue to look for money on a daily basis that can go to this. I think I just found another one that, you know, it might only be 150,000 that I get out of it, but it's 150,000 that we're not paying as taxpayers. So we'll continue to look at it. Are there any other questions from people that have not commented yet?
Anyone who hasn't commented yet. But
Okay. When I went to the meeting that you had, what I thought I heard from the DEQ was if the bond didn't pass, you have what do you call the CAS? You have to start complying within a certain amount of time. You might have another year or so. At that point in time, the DEQ can actually take situations in their own hand. They don't like to do it, but they do have the power to do that. So would that not sort of make this a very important bond vote to occur now, where you know that you're going to have the DEQ with a gun at your head in a year?
No, it most definitely is. Although they don't typically do it, if we don't meet the CAS, the compliance agreement schedule, they do have the opportunity to say, we are no longer going to recognize that as a public water source. And now we've lost it. And when you lose a water source like that, it's not like you just go get it back and you get your original date stamp back on it. If we lose that water source, we will be going into mandatory water restrictions. We will be looking at other ways to fund another water source, which would be a well. And that puts us right back where we were at the beginning of tonight when we were talking about the Big Wood Groundwater Management Plan and the ability for senior water surface right users to curtail our water usage. So we would be even on more water restrictions. This spring system is 100% the only sustainable water source that Bellevue has. It has the oldest water right. It cannot be curtailed. It is a gravity fed system that costs us nothing to pump. It does not shut down when the power goes out. So we do not need generators to make it happen. It is 100% the future of Bellevue's water. And so we need to do whatever we need to do to ensure for the future of Bellevue that we do not lose that water source.
So Chris, since Jeff brought this up, this looming threat of the DEQ taking our water, was that something that existed in February? Or is this a situation and the May bond a product of the March amendment?
DEQ is not in the interest of stealing or shutting down people's water rights. They want to work with us to fix it and meet compliance. That's the bottom line. But they do have the authority to do that. They can shut it down. It was not a symptom of this bond. It wasn't any other pre-contract. It's the regulations. If you do not meet your compliance agreements, they can force you to make your compliance agreements. That would require us to either give up the spring source or else take a full loan on the taxpayers, 100% of the cost to get back into compliance. At least right now, we've gotten a third of the money that is going to help this problem. We are still looking for additional funds so the whole drawdown does not fall onto the city. But the funding pools are drying up. They're running into less and less. The government as a whole has seen the influx of water infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure projects. I think right now I just looked at the wastewater LOIs come out. There's over $300 to $500 million in wastewater projects alone that are needed throughout the state, and only 2 of them got funded this year. So they were, I think, around 58 applications, 2 got funded. So this is the one opportunity that we're going to get infrastructure money at this level and at these interest rates. We're going to continue to have to fight the rest of the state for additional funds. I mean, I think we are lucky to have one project getting the ability to take care of one project right now. And I'll continue to work with Bryson and Great West on how we get the plant back in operation. And we're still waiting for feedback from iCrimp. We have an insurance claim on fixing some of that plant. So we are going to have money to help fix and get that plant back operational. So it's not always going to be coming out to loans. We're going to continue to look and find other revenue sources or other grant sources. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there? Have anything more to add?
I think it's a good project. You gotta go for it, you know?
Well,
we
you
don't
and I
have-
have worked under 5 different mayors.
You know, but, and know that it goes back before this 2000, goes back to 1900, or the 90s, goes back to the 80s, go back to the 70s. You know, they literally kicked the bucket down the road for any project for years. They cut our taxes, oh great, cut our taxes, but they don't do anything with it. You know, they build roads, do that, they think that the gravel roads are okay. You know, and that's just in the 90s, the 90s. You know, it's time to pay the piper, unfortunately. We're making some hard decisions. And then, you know, all I can say is that, but a good project going on here, a good thing. It's gonna help us a lot. And if we don't finish it, we're gonna be in big trouble. Big trouble. That's all there is to it.
All right, thanks, Sean. Unless there's anybody else online or in the gallery, any last questions?
Thanks for opening it up to everybody tonight, Chris. It was a great choice by all of you to give us a chance to have a dialogue. So thank you. It was a fun night, actually.
Thank you to those that showed up. We appreciate the opportunity to have the dialogue with you and to present the information, so.
Come back during budget hearing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You guys to do it.
If you think this is
Because I've done it a
Oh,
long
I
time
came
and
down
nobody
when
should.
Doug said, let's get rid of the library. That's how I got involved in all this. And went down to tell the neighbors, we're going down.
Happy to have you here.
It isn't working
All right.
anymore.
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and discussion on item 3. I appreciate everybody's attendance and thank you, Christina, Stuart, and Greg. We'll let you go at this time. So appreciate you being here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
council, and everybody.
Yeah.
All right. At this time, I will go ahead and open up public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anything, please, 3 to 5 minutes that is not on the agenda or revolves around the water bond or project?
We do have a hand in the room.
Yep.
Tammy Davis with the Crisis Hotline and Building Material Thrift. I just wanted to say that it is in the works, and I'm just gonna say this now, because We would like to try to resurrect the haunted forest this year. So I just want to kind of put that out there right now. There's work to be done, but we decided as a few of us, and I was getting around, so I just wanted to throw that out there. And we will follow the process. I don't expect any special attention, but I just wanted to let you know that it's in the works.
Good.
It's a good event, yeah.
And a big shout out to Greg and his airport team that won an award up at the airport for keeping the runways clear. There's never a flight diverted because of the runways for the last almost 4 years. Is that right, Greg? And there is a buy a coffee / donate to the team at Bellevue that works, that you can give them a shout out, and we'll send them money at the end of the month to those guys for, coffee.
We have a pretty fancy coffee machine there.
Yeah.
We do appreciate that, and I share it with the airport guys too.
Yeah, and I sent some to Trent that's up there, and you could even take it and go over to Mahoney's with the bikers.
I want to say thank you to all the volunteers that came out for the clean sweep. We had twice as many as last year, or over twice as
60.
many. So
Yeah.
about 3 times.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you to Jessica for all the work that she put in to help get more people out. So thank you.
Thanks for everybody for being out there. It was fun.
Yeah.
Let's do more.
Yeah, really nice work on that, Jessica. Way to coordinate and getting some food out there. The hurdy-gurdy girls, and
Thanks, Lou.
all that. No, it really turned out great, and thanks for your help on that. Anything else on public comment? All right, this time I'll go ahead and close public comment. Next, we have a presentation from Blaine County Housing Authority. I think we have Cece and Krista Conley on here. So you guys are Ryan Rooney. So go ahead. Who wants to kick it off?
Do you prefer a place for me to sit? Should I move it up here again?
I'll pull the, there's a nice extension.
Do you want to sit or do you want
to stand? Because you can use this.
I could do either. Seems like everyone's sitting. I could stand if you want me to.
Yeah, I understand, but no, we'll see you.
Okay. I'll leave this here then. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am gonna share my screen. Because we have a little presentation.
I'm not gonna be in your view shed.
That. So I am with the Blaine County Housing Authority. I'm the housing director. We also have Ryan Rooney on the line. He's our housing fellow. And I'll be introducing some things. I know you mentioned that Cece's on. She's not part of the presentation. I know she wanted to give some public comment though. So before I get into the presentation though, just want to say briefly that community housing, because I'll be using this term a lot and we'll dig into it a bit more. But community housing means homes that are legally restricted for local use and occupancy. And the housing authority is essentially a one-stop shop for community housing throughout Blaine County. So I'll be giving you a bit of context on the housing situation in Blaine County. Then Ryan will walk you through some community housing incentives that can be used through zoning specifically and some of the role that council can play. Then I'll explain the housing authority's role and responsibilities and how we can help you with some of these things. So starting off with context, Blaine County's housing stock has changed substantially over the last 14 years, even longer. We've seen a substantial increase in seasonal or short-term rentals, a decrease in long-term rentals. Home vacancy has gone up by 17%. And when I say home vacancy, those are the seasonal and short-term rentals. Some homes here are vacant in the traditional sense, but really for our broader community, it means seasonal and short-term rentals. We've lost between 2010 and 2021, 715 rentals, long-term rentals. And households didn't convert to ownership. So those are households that literally left the valley. They don't live here anymore. So As of 2021, 45% of the county's housing stock was technically vacant. We've seen changes in the community at the same time. So we've seen an increase in the number of retirees and remote workers, while there's been a decrease in the number of families and local workers. So a couple of touch points on that. Our median age went up by 5 years between 2010 and 2022. And during that same timeframe, the average annual income of households moving out was about 80,000. The average annual income of households moving in is 260,000, so substantially different. We also have a lot of households and locals continue to be at risk because of rising housing costs. About 40 local residents are at risk of displacement because they're either in housing unstable situations or they're cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing costs, rent, mortgage, utilities, all the things. And when I say housing instability, that means a range of things. For those seeking housing or expecting to need new housing in Blaine County in the next 2 years, over 50% are a month-to-month or verbal lease. That means they literally have no right to their home in 30 days. Others are couch surfing in overcrowded situations. We have people living in garages, unheated RVs, cars. And yes, people experiencing domestic violence. So coming to some specifics for Bellevue. Last year, your median advertised rent was $2,500 for a 2-bedroom. That means that you would need to earn about $100,000 to afford that rent. Medium home sales prices, you need an even higher income of at least $170,000 annually to afford the medium home sales price of $690,000. So we did a needs assessment a couple of years ago and have numbers for each of the jurisdictions. For Bellevue, that means a minimum of 515 community housing units by 2032. Those can be new, but they can also be preserving existing homes. So making sure that the households that are already here can either remain in their home or at least have access to affordable housing, or they can be converted from those vacant units back into the local use pool. So that number is primarily from households that already live here. There's a 1% growth. If you look at historic growth that's added into that, there's a high growth scenario that makes that number higher. But so 515 is the minimum when you're looking at what it was prior to the pandemic for growth and the existing households at risk of displacement. Countywide, that number is a lot bigger, minimum of 4,700 new homes. And you can get a sense, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but you can get a sense that this need is really across the income level. So this bar on the far right are for households earning up to $95 an hour. But the bulk of the need are those households earning under $30 an hour. That's what we consider our 80% area mean income and lower. Those are low income households. So community housing, and I'll pause in a second to just touch base with you. Again, homes that are legally restricted for local use and occupancy, you can also restrict for rent price, you can restrict for resale price. There are different forms of legal restriction. It could be through a deed restriction, which is the bulk of what the housing authority works in. You can do ground leases. There's a number of different legal mechanisms that you can use. But for your purposes, through zoning and that sort of thing, it would more likely be through deed restrictions and ground leases. So this is differentiating between community housing and market rate housing. So community housing creates a sub-pool accessible just to locals. So any questions on that? On the right, we have some municipal definitions of what those are, just to give you an idea. But I just want to pause to see if anyone has any questions on what community housing is or what I just presented on before I move on.
Well, how do you get some of the numbers that you've gotten so far, like 515, and what are the variables in there?
Yeah.
Like traffic pollution, like all of that, when you figure out a number that's appropriate and sustainable.
This one actually
Like, what
isn't
do you want?
accounting for commuting. These are just households that are cost burdened or in overcrowded situations. They might be experiencing homelessness, or their housing is considered substandard where they don't have access to a reasonable kitchen, sanitary system, that sort of thing.
So the 515 units are people who are already here, and you're trying to find places for them.
Or make sure that the home that they're living in can continue to be affordable, or rather convert to something that's affordable. Okay. So I'm gonna hand over to Ryan, who is remote.
Thanks, Carissa, and thanks to the mayor and council for inviting us to speak or having us to speak today. Yeah, and sorry I can't be with you in the room. I'll just present a little bit on some strategies to consider and kind of how BCHA can kind of help you all think about policies for using kind of your role as the city council and also your planning and zoning commission's role to kind of use how you could potentially use zoning to incentivize the production of community housing using market, incentivizing the market. So just for some background, Idaho specifically, but like many states in the country, but Idaho very uniquely is pretty restrictive in what its jurisdictions can do for generating housing that's affordable and for generating revenue specifically for housing affordability. Municipalities in Idaho can't have what's called inclusionary zoning, which is to say they can't require affordable housing to be built along as part of a market rate development. They can't charge impact fees specific to housing. They can for other things, of course, but not for housing. There's no rent control. They don't have kind of control over minimum wage, real estate transfer tax, vacant homes tax, and state tax incentives, and very limited ability to regulate short-term rentals. So that's kind of on the regulatory side. So what jurisdictions can do, and Chris, you can go to the next slide, is really using incentivization to work with and incentivize private developers, the market, to help contribute to housing needs. And this can be beneficial because it can also come at very, very little to no cost to the city because the market's delivering these things. So in your role as kind of the council and also with the Planning and Zoning Commission, your wheelhouse and your sort of role, is over these tools. The tools sort of in your code, annexations and rezonings, which are these legislative decisions that grant new rights to private property or to developers to the private market and grant new entitlements. And those moments as legislative decisions, as discretionary decisions, are opportunities to help, to negotiate community benefits. Development agreements, which you're probably familiar with, are kind of one of the legal tools that can help ensure or provide assurances that those, negotiated community benefits will occur. But I think kind of a bottom line takeaway is once property is upzoned, once it's been granted more rights than it had under its previous zoning, it's very legally difficult to go back, right? So those moments of change are key kind of leverage points. When you're giving something, you have the opportunity to get something, but then you can't really come back and ask for those things later. Ground leasing publicly owned land. This is something that the city of Ketchum's is using recently, where if the city owns property, it can contribute that property via ground lease while maintaining ownership of it to a developer to reduce development costs, the cost of land. And it allows the city to set some terms for what gets developed on it. We've seen 32 community housing units placed in service through ground leasing with 115 on the way. So that can be a very effective tool specifically at driving community housing volume just by the city helping kind of contribute and reduce the cost of land. And then within the zoning code itself, you have planned unit developments, and you've got just like the zoning code overall, your various zones, the standards associated with them. With planned unit developments, PUDs, I know that Bellevue does have a PUD ordinance I was reviewing, and It's interesting, it does contain already an optional 10% density bonus for the provision of community housing. So there's the beginnings of this concept of incentives already in your ordinances. It doesn't go into more detail around clarifying what provision of community housing means, and there's no formal definition, but it's the beginning of kind of that concept of we'll give you, the developer, a little bit more, 10% more density if you provide something, community housing or some other community benefit. So just, and then on the kind of general zoning code side, in terms of development bonuses, what these typically look like, and I'll go into an example on the next slide, are giving developers the choice, or private property owners the choice, to build to their set standard, their base standard, or take an optional and voluntary choice to exceed those base standards and build higher, or build with a different use, or build with more floor area, or whatever it is, in exchange for providing something back to the city in return. And those are typically specifically defined within your zoning code via text amendments. And then, of course, you can have upper limits on these things to ensure that, whatever is produced, meets Bellevue's desired community character, right? So it's there's an upper limit to what that bonus can be. But things that we frequently see are height, floor area, density, setbacks, kind of changes or allowances to those standards. But I think also with use, you could see that as well, allowed uses. So voluntary density bonus, there's a version of this that the city of Ketchum has used, and it's actually produced about 1/3 of the community housing units that's in Blaine County Housing Authority's permanent housing portfolio. So units that are formally restricted community housing units have been generated through this market incentive tool. And like I said, it's using the zoning code to incentivize community housing, where market developers are really opting in. They're making a choice to go above and beyond, or in terms of what they can get out of a project, but they're giving something in return. I do want to point out that there's no one size fits all. It can be small scale. It could be allowing single family homeowners to add an ADU to their property, an accessory dwelling unit, or for a lot to be developed as a duplex instead of a single family. So it can occur at a very small scale too, and those things can all be calibrated to the to the zone and to the neighborhood character. Something I do want to emphasize, and Carissa will talk a little bit more about this, is typically what we see in this community in Blaine County is a public or a nonprofit partner, BCHA does a lot of these, provides that restriction, that formal legal restriction on the units that are produced through these mechanisms, and they manage the screening and the compliance. So the developer builds the building, the BCHA or another nonprofit or public partner manages that deed restriction and does compliance on the community housing units to ensure that there's a qualified local living in the home, and helps the developer on the lease up. So there's no kind of responsibility of the city to be involved in that. With Ketchum's program specifically, the developer can choose a few ways to meet that obligation if they choose to opt in. They can provide community housing on site, and that's what we see in some of Ketchum's buildings, is that they'll have market rate units, and then they'll have some community housing units mixed into the same development. And then the other one that we frequently see is that they'll choose to pay a fee in lieu of providing the units. So then they'll actually contribute directly to a community housing fund that then gets turned around and helps fund other community housing projects and developments. There's a couple of other mechanisms too, but they're not frequently used. So in the diagram on the bottom, I think it's helpful to demonstrate sort of what this can look like. And like I said, it doesn't need to be, this diagram has a 5- and 6-story building. It doesn't need to be big. It can be really at any size, at any zone. But what you have on the left there is kind of the maximum density under sort of base zoning. Maybe that zoning says you can go 5 stories and some number of floor area. So a developer can do that and build that all day, build market rate units. Or they can say there's another piece of the code, and that's your development bonus. And it's an incentive, and it says, oh, you can actually add a 6-story, build more market rate units if you give, what is that, 6 community housing units as part of that development. And the developer will choose that if that's, if they do the math themselves and think, oh, that's actually a better deal for me. And so that's the key, is kind of you're creating an incentive that's more attractive than the base offering, and you're getting something in return for it. So that's conceptually how it works. And Carissa, you can go to the next slide. The last thing I wanted to point out is that the Blaine County Housing Authority and Wood River Land Trust together have hired a consultant to look at and create a report on the housing need, the local housing need that's generated by new development across the county by jurisdiction. These studies have been done kind of across the country. This is Teton County, Idaho's study from 2023. But basically the idea being that new development, whether it be residential or commercial, has an impact in terms of generating some number of workers, local workers who are serving that local use, or whose money is spent in the local economy. And that results in a need for housing for those people who work those jobs locally. And so this report is in the works. It'll be ready, I believe, next month or in July. This is important. This is helpful in thinking about policy, because you can start to think about, okay, well, if 100 market rate condos are generating 20, the need for 20 additional community houses, how do you start to think about an incentive policy, or how do you start to think about your kind of land use decisions in that context? So it gives some numbers to justify and to think about policymaking. And then I'll leave you with just some recommendations, and just knowing too that we can continue these conversations, and BCHA is a resource. But just to reiterate some of the things we talked about, the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission can use those tools I mentioned, the zoning code, PUDs, annexation and rezoning opportunities, to incentivize community housing, to give something to the market and to get something back for the community. Rather than kind of giving away density without asking for anything back, consider using, a development.
Common Council, Monday, May 13th.
So sorry, I didn't catch that.
Someone's computer was talking, Ryan, you can go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, rather than kind of giving density away through the zoning code, consider those moments of when you're making changes, when you have that power and leverage to either think about development bonuses to create that additional density that you may or may not be seeking, that matches the community character, and think about community housing production. Once you've granted zoning that allows for additional density or a new use, you can't really go back once you've granted it. So kind of getting ahead of those. And then we want to help you all make informed decisions, make more informed decisions, and have kind of, some of our data we can share. We have that employee generation nexus study that's going to be available in July. We also could offer, a workshop to the council to get into greater detail on any of these items with you all and or with the Planning and Zoning Commission, who we met with last week. And then also just thinking about, facilitated community discussions, specifically with regards to community housing, in consideration of sort of the annexations and, potentially to the north and south of Bellevue. And then just, getting in touch and asking for help and information, both Blaine County Housing Authority and Wood River Land Trust, that CC Osborne works for, are resources to you.
And on that second to last bullet, I just want to jump in and add, we understand that it can be sort of challenging to say, hey, we want to facilitate this entirely new community discussion. there are grant opportunities that we could help you with to bring in a third party who would be much better suited. You know, there's a lot of community interest around the annexations and different, you know, Mountain Rides, Arch, Blaine County Housing Authority, School District. There's a lot of different organizations, including Bellevue, citizens. And so if you wanted to bring in someone else to facilitate a discussion, we could potentially help you figure out how to do that.
So is your organization's goal to turn this area into Twin Falls or Boise? Is that kind of?
Not at all.
Just, well,
No.
so how do you suggest to a community that appreciates its lack of density and that, at least for most hours of the day now, we can still drive through the community, right? And considering that we have a history of waiving our hookup fees, right? I think that was a revenue for Arch and things like that. Why is this such a huge thing? How did this become the dream of this?
Who's talking?
Housing? Suzanne.
Sorry, Suzanne, right now we're not having, this isn't public comment.
Okay, I thought
Yeah,
earlier she was.
The question, I meant mainly for
Sorry.
the council, but I can answer
Sorry, my
your
bad.
question.
I think what we could do is provide Chris's contact information at the end
No,
of
no,
this,
I'll
yeah.
just shoot, I'll get the
Okay.
slide. Sorry, I thought
Wonderful.
that was the.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Oh, we
understanding.
were still
It's
there.
okay, thank you for.
So I'm gonna go into our roles and responsibilities and give a bit of context as to why I believe we were invited here today to discuss. So the Housing Authority serves all of Blaine County. We're funded by the county, the city of Ketchum, grants and donations, and we can provide services to all Blaine County jurisdictions at no cost. We have a set of goals that drive everything that we do, and they're meant to be comprehensive because the housing crisis is very complex. I'm only gonna highlight the ones that are most relevant to you today, but if at another point you wanna dig in anything else, happy to do that. So our second goal is to recommend and advocate for policy that promotes community housing. BCHA has historically done this, provided policy guidance to local governments, and we have acted as a housing resource for local governments. We were brought in last week with planning and zoning because of the text amendment that's put in front of them regarding changes to the business code, business district code. So we had a discussion with them earlier today to look at how we might work or provide further input on that. We also act as a primary point of entry for housing, so we have a common intake form in English and Spanish. This gives us an idea of the household characteristics and help us determine what the household would be eligible for. So whether it be housing authority opportunities or other local housing providers, we can refer them out. So for example, we are doing initial screening for a development in Ketchum right now that's for low income housing, and another one that would be for moderate income housing. And then, as I said, we can recommend, we can refer out to other housing providers based on household characteristics. We also steward and preserve anything that's in our housing portfolio, and we try to help expand the portfolio of community homes, just recognizing the need countywide. So what we do through, and I wanna highlight this because I know this comes up a lot. I listened in on some of your minutes for a meeting maybe a month or so ago, and I know this question came up. Preserving affordability and who has access to the home is really only as good as the legal restriction you have on it. Also only as good as the screening of any applicant that goes into it and ongoing compliance, and that's something that we do. For any community home in the housing authority's portfolio, we require a preference for local residents and workers. We can administer, review, and provide annual compliance and enforcement on the community home. So we have legal counsel that's very familiar with these restrictions and enforces them. And then we can also help, just research, brainstorm, provide feedback on any housing programs you're considering. So opening it up for questions. Anything you want to talk about? And we have, these are the recommendations that Ryan had brought up, if you want to dig in any of those.
Council, do you have any questions for? Speak.
just know that the rentals are no longer, a stable commodity. Short-term rentals now, the key, sell short-term rentals, I've got numerous fans get kicked out for short-term rentals. That I know Idaho can't do anything about it. My sister lives in Manhattan Beach, California. They banned them. Just saying.
Yeah, so one thing with the deed restrictions that we put on, they can't short-term rent. They have to live in the home 9 months of the year, and we check that.
Are there income qualifications for people to go into these housing?
Oh, that was one thing I meant to emphasize. Okay, so you can have income restrictions. I'm gonna flip back to this slide real quick. This was here, right? So this far right goes up to the $95 an hour. That's what we consider this one, and this one are what we consider our category local, where there's not gonna be a rent cap or a sales cap, but the restriction is really that it's reducing the market to just people who live here. So whatever you put in your code, whatever policies you decide, you can designate, okay, we wanna see this income range. For example, Ketchum's is really only category 4, so we see a lot of category 4, which is in here, the middle income range. The lower you get in the income restriction, the more expensive it's gonna be for the developer. So that's just something when we think about trade-offs, if a developer wants to come in, I would say, okay, if you're providing only category local, then I would want to see more units than if you're providing a lower income unit. And so we check, when we do screenings, we check in the compliance, we're checking their incomes.
What if you have someone with a disability that is unable to work?
Yeah, so that's an exception. Under fair housing law, we definitely have to allow people who have a disability to have access to housing. And also people who have been living in the community and are retiring or of retirement age, they don't have to meet the same work requirements. But we would need to see that they were living here to get the preference.
Looking at your Blaine County housing stock, I'm kind of back at the beginning. Do you have any further breakdown citywide, on Bellevue in particular?
We could provide that.
I'm just curious what our actual vacancy stock is. And for the definition of vacancy, is that what you're saying is not long-term rentals or owner occupied? So that could be vacation homes, short-term rentals, things of that nature.
Exactly. Yeah, we can follow up with that.
We can definitely provide that, and just so that you all know, these numbers come directly from the Census Bureau, American Community Survey, so we can pull that for you.
Chris, I remember you speaking about in a previous discussion with, and maybe it's Bluebird. How is that income structure working for people coming into there? And isn't it varying by income levels?
Yeah, so that one is primarily 50 to 70% area median income. It's all low income except for 3 of the units.
Okay.
So 3 of the units are 140% area median income.
I'm looking at the voluntary density bonus page, and the 115 community housing units that were financed through in lieu fees, that's in Ketchum, correct? That you're talking about? Okay, so those were the in lieu fees that the developer opted in to pay. So that's in lieu of providing community housing.
Correct.
And then the city compiled fees from different developers and now has enough to then build out 115 community housing units.
Right, it's essentially gap funding for new construction. So all those 115 are also ground leased. So the developer doesn't have to pay for the land, like a nominal fee. The city maintains long-term ownership and affordability of the land. And then, but they still have, in order to get to those lower income levels, they still have a gap in their funding. And so we use the in lieu fee, Ketchum uses the in lieu fee to fill that gap.
Okay, so they're not fully funded by the in lieu fee, but the in lieu fee is the gap funding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of that went into Bluebird, the low income housing development, some of it would go into the moderate income development as well. And to your question, I just wanted to point out with the income ranges, because sometimes I know it's kind of surreal, the need that we have across income levels. But I can give you an example, some examples of a lawyer who has to go to the Hunger Coalition for food because their rent is too high. I know of an architect who's living in an office. I know a city councilor who's experiencing homelessness. I'm on a month lease. So there's a lot of local community members who wouldn't qualify for low income housing or even some of the moderate income housing available, but they are still very housing unstable.
Any other questions? Cece, did you have some stuff you want to add? All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for the presentation tonight. I appreciate you being here and helping us figure this out. I know it is a concern of a lot of us, and there is a need in the community. We'll continue to work on it. And, you know, we have the one cottage that we brought in, and we've seen how difficult it was to get somebody that qualified from the city, and how much the rent still is, even on these affordable programs. So we'll continue to follow and work with you guys, and you know, hopefully we can come up with some opportunities as we start looking at some annexations and developments and other projects throughout the city.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sitting through everything.
Yeah.
Okay, proclamation, item 6, proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month 2024. This measure recognizes May 2024 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Blaine County to enhance public awareness of mental health and well-being and dispelling the stigma surrounding it. Given the length of the meeting so far, I would like to waive the whole reading of the proclamation unless somebody there in person wants to read it.
I'm happy to read it. You want my copy? Huh?
I would just like to make one comment, Tammy Davis, again, Crisis Hotline. And this is just in support of this, that a lot of people look, when they think of mental health, there's a negative connotation connected to it. There is a new mental well-being initiative started, but I would still like to invite everyone to recognize that mental health is not a negative connotation. Mental health is just a word, right? And when we're happy, when our kids do well in school, or we get a raise at our job, we feel good about that. When we have a good day, we go fishing, that's still mental health. So, you know, trying to change the narrative is really what we've been trying to work on as the initiative working together. And part of that is recognizing mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and building a more strength-based initiative, which is different than just pointing out all the negatives. So we're really working on again, changing the narrative. And so if you're okay with that, I don't know if you have a proclamation number or like a number you would give it. 02, sorry, thank you. So proclamation 2024-02, proclaiming May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health and well-being is fundamental to the overall health and resiliency of all Bellevue citizens, as it promotes productive activities, enables fulfilling relationships with others, and provides the foundation to adapt to change and cope with adversity. And whereas mental health challenges are one of the most common health conditions, in fact, affecting 1 out of 5 adults and 1 out of 4 children, and impacting both the person experiencing the mental health challenges and those who care for and love that person facing the challenge. Whereas the citizens of Bellevue are valued for their strength and resilience and compassion toward one another, embodying the spirit of unity and facing challenges and supporting each other through difficult times. And whereas especially during Mental Health Awareness Month, it is important to acknowledge and celebrate the diverse strengths and abilities of the citizens of Bellevue, recognizing that everyone possesses unique talents and capabilities that contribute to the health and vitality of our community. Whereas by promoting mental health awareness, we can end the stigma, create a more inclusive and supportive community where individuals feel empowered to seek help, access resources, and engage in meaningful dialogue about mental health. And whereas access to support, services, treatment, and ending the stigma are of paramount importance. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organizations, and citizen shall share the responsibility to promote mental wellness, recognize the signs of mental distress, increase prevention efforts, advocate for access to effective treatment for mental illness, and support individuals and families suffering from mental health challenges. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Bellevue wishes to enhance public awareness of mental health and foster a more resilient Bellevue, now therefore be it resolved, you, the mayor and city council of the city of Bellevue, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Bellevue. We commend the resilience and strength of our citizens and encourage everyone to embrace their inner strengths, inherent strengths, support one another, and prioritize mental health and well-being.
I appreciate
So-
that, Tammy. Yeah, thank you for reading that. Do we need to vote to accept that as a proclamation, or are we proclamated?
Yes, we have to vote on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Rick says we gotta vote on it.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be roll call or anything, just
I'll take a
All in favor?
motion.
somebody make a motion.
Okay, I move to accept the proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month of the month of May 2024.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Tammy. Really appreciate you reading that for us and bring it to our attention. All right, I think we are consent agenda. Item 7, we've got approval of council minutes, approval of claims, approval for the bill of sale release agreement between Sun Valley and Bellevue Fire Department for a 1994 International Fire Truck in the amount of $1. Request for funds from the water department in the amount of $4,654 for tank maintenance, and then request for funds from the street department for $13,791 for a load trailer. Any questions on any of those items?
I have a question about the DBS contract later for P and Z, the Division of Building and Safety. What is that, a reoccurring yearly charge? And just, there was a whole bunch of like permit fees, RVW fees, building permit fees. Do you know what those are?
Do you want to
From-
answer that, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Shelley. Or Amy. Oh, by the way, welcome, Amy, our newest member of our city staff, Amy Phelps. Pleasure to have you here tonight.
She picked a good one.
Yeah, she did.
Those fees of all the building permits that come in, we are contracted with DBS.
Okay.
And they get 45% of the total building permit fees. So it's paid monthly, basically, as it happens.
Yeah, 45% of the plan review fee.
Of just the plan review fee, okay.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
when I looked at some building, so sorry.
And the BDE water professionals, the emergency response charges, was there an emergency as of late?
There's always an
four.
emergency.
Always emergency?
Bryson is
Okay.
on the, Bryson maybe can address that.
Yeah, it's for wastewater and for the water, so I was just curious. 'Cause, yeah, we're being
Yes.
charged. Yeah.
Mayor Johnson, so there was a power outage last month and I had to come up and make sure that everything was running right, that our generators were firing right, and that tank level was all right. We did not have SCADA access during the power outage. It was an elongated power outage. So I just split it between both departments.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one question, Mayor, about the claims payable in the South Valley Storage unit. Is this the same unit that we had problems with?
It's
Okay,
been forever, I believe that we've had this, yes.
It's halfway cleaned out.
that's what,
Yes.
that's the unit you cleaned out.
Well, it's still there, but about half it's gone.
Okay.
And then when it gets a little warmer, I'm gonna get to all the boxes and have them come and shred everything that needs to be destroyed. I don't think
Okay,
anything's been destroyed since 2018.
thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Do we have any update on, I've seen that we paid for the website. When is our new website go live?
When we first set it up, it had like, it was a lot of gray. I didn't like the gray. Did you like the gray?
Yeah, so there's a color conversation back and forth, and then we're moving forward on some
Yeah.
stuff from there. We're just
I
gotta,
changed the little bars to the blue and I kind of used like a coral kind of thing. I thought it was nice. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you liked it. Cause I was looking for secondary colors that were.
I owe an email back to Michelle, and we're moving forward. Basically, we're just in like a little bit of that initial design blocking phase, so it's progressing.
Yeah.
It's
Got
just
it.
a little back and forth with the developers,
Okay,
so it's in process.
The first set of colors was kind of ugly.
Yeah.
okay.
So when do you think the new site will be live?
I think what could be important too is getting a timeline from them.
Yeah.
We haven't really gotten clarification on kind of how the steps are broken out yet.
No, I do. It's
Oh, you
like
do? Okay.
It's like a 14 to 16 week, but we've been stuck on the color.
Yeah.
We can't get something to work with the blue, red, gray, the gray.
Did you guys figure out a color block? Cause I could just like easily whip that up in like an hour.
I think that, to be completely transparent, there's been a lot of things that have been happening within the city, and
Yeah.
the website has been a priority, but there
Yeah.
have been a few other things that have been a higher priority. So I think the intention is to get back to it. Happy to loop you in if you feel
Yeah.
like you want to, but I think there's
Happy to
been
help.
between.
Yeah.
It's just, there's been other
Priorities,
things.
levels,
Yep.
yep.
We're getting there.
Got it. Great.
Any other discussion? Take a motion on the consent agenda.
To approve consent agenda?
Second.
And I just want to note that you do only have one set of minutes in there, the March 11th or whatever. They're not in, it's just the February 26th, just so you know that.
Thank you.
Member Mahoney,
Yep.
President Brodani,
Yes.
Member Ferrero,
Yes.
Member Oppenau,
Yes.
Member Leahy,
Yes.
Member Shea.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 8, new business. First on A, consideration resolution 2375, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bellevue, Idaho, expressing appreciation and the acceptance of a 2011 Elgin Pelican Street Sweeper purchased by the Bellevue Urban Renewal Agency. So Casey was able to find a street sweeper. We had, I think it was Metro Equip, look it over, make sure it was in decent shape, and Burr was kind enough to purchase it for us.
Very exciting.
Casey's already been putting it to work and we just need to accept ownership of it now.
How much? If I may ask.
How much, Mayor?
It was 75,000 with transport, yeah.
Thank you. Letting the-
I will move to adopt resolution number 2375. A resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bellevue Bellevue, Idaho, expressing appreciation, acceptance of the 2011 Elgin Pelican Street Sweeper purchased by the Bellevue Urban Renewal Agency.
Second.
Member Mahoney?
Yep.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Carrera?
Yes.
Member Rivera?
Yes.
Member Leahy?
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. Item B, consideration of resolution number 2376, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bellevue, Idaho, authorizing the treasurer to transfer $10,358 from Strayhorn Phase 2 Bond Savings LGIP 4037 to the City General Fund 8993 as payment towards city engineering invoices paid on behalf of Strayhorn Subdivision.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Right, it's all the same thing. Just gonna change it up. Member Carrera?
Yes.
Member Rivera?
Yes.
President Jordan?
Yes.
Member Leahy?
Yes.
Member Shane?
Yes.
Member Mahoney?
Yeah, yes.
All right, thank you. Item C, consideration of resolution 2377, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bellevue, Idaho, authorizing the mayor to execute a standby preventative maintenance customer support agreement with Western States CAT for new and used electrical power equipment for a term of 3 years beginning May 2024, with an agreed total of $6,908.01 per year. So these are basically maintenance on our generators. So in the event of a power outage, we still have operations down at the water plant, lift stations, and they do the maintenance and test them annually.
Does anyone do this now?
What's that?
Does anyone do this now?
They do it right now. We're just extending the contract for another 3 years.
If we had somebody on staff, couldn't they do this?
No.
No.
So there's
Okay.
certain things you have to do for testing loads, and it's typically contracted out. You would have to have somebody that is very specific, that understands how to annually maintenance a generator, and typically not a staff person. Contracts are common throughout the state.
I move to adopt resolution number 2377, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bellevue, Idaho, authorizing the mayor to execute a standby preventative maintenance customer service agreement with Western States CAT for new and used electric power equipment for a term of 3 years beginning May 2024, with an agreed total of $6,908.01 per year.
Second.
Yes.
Member Rivera?
Yes.
Member Leahy?
Yes.
Member Carrera?
Yes.
Member Mahoney?
Yep.
President Jordan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Final item D, consideration and discussion of possible approval of budget reallocations for administrative, fire, marshal, and streets departments and wastewater and water funds for fiscal year 2024.
Okay, I can walk you through. And try to simplify. I don't know how much time you had to digest everything that I gave you all, but Basically, the goal is to not have to have a budget amendment, which has to go through public comment and all the noticing and all of that. If we can juggle line items within each department and or each fund, i.e. general fund, and then all of the departments in the general fund. Water and sewer, of course, are totally separate. So what your packet has is basically the shortfalls under particular line items. And then how we can juggle from each within the admin department, where we have funds that we can juggle to those shortness. And so I've explained it in the text, as well as provided you like the spreadsheets that show the items that need with the budget amount, where we're at 6 months, and what the estimated remaining 6 months. Keeping in mind, this is all a guess, because I don't know for sure exactly what anything is gonna be in 6 months, but I can guess. And then what the estimated need is for each one of the departments. Do you want to go through details of each one? Or do you want to ask me questions about any particular ones that you see? I spent a lot of time on this. And I think at this point, we're gonna be okay unless something happens that I'm not foreseeing here. And then worst case scenario is we have to do a budget amendment later in the year. So. Does that make sense that we can juggle within each one?
Yes, because I do it all the time.
You do
in
it
my
all the
job,
time.
so I
A couple, unless I'm misreading it, a couple of them still will have a deficit though, correct?
Well, yes, when you look at this, actually, Marshall's, we have talked about this and we know that we'll figure it out.
Okay.
It's not a huge amount. So somewhere, there are funds that have, there are items in his budget that have considerable funds there. And as we get closer to the end of the budget year, we can figure out how we might juggle.
Okay.
Correct, Kurt?
Yes, it's the 8,000.
Yeah, roughly the 8,000.
8,000 I can absorb with just pinching in other areas.
Yeah. So yes, that one, sorry, I didn't make that clear.
No, and I just thought that admin one I saw, there might still be a little bit of, am I misreading that? There might be a little bit of.
No, in the admin, unless something happens with conjunctive management, which nothing has been charged to that line item this year out of admin. It's all the conjunctive management has been water and sewer. So I don't know the history as to why this was budgeted here, or whether it was a backup, I don't know.
The water law turns.
Okay, but they're coming out of water and wastewater.
Right.
This is in the admin budget. Yeah, well, there's money there. Anyway, so they, the amount, hold on a second, and maybe I didn't put that on here clearly. I think it's like 27,000.
Okay.
And so it's more than what the deficit is.
So basically, the restructuring within each category, you feel will be able to then meet the demands without.
That's the goal at this
The goal, okay,
Yes,
thank you.
unless something happens haywire.
Mhm.
I think we've got it figured out that each one has it. It's just a matter of where it comes from and which one it applies to.
Kelly, can I ask, why are our emails so expensive and we're charged? It says the Microsoft 365 emails and it looks like there's 2 different charges.
Yes, there's one for the active, we pay for Microsoft 365.
Right.
Okay, so all of us staff
Okay.
are 365. Then there's people that just have email. And that's the other category.
Okay, got it.
So like you guys all have email.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The big one that is as I like to say, the more problem child is streets, but Borough has helped a lot with streets. And I think the big issue with streets was, payroll was under budgeted. It wasn't planned for what was hired for the year. So that's why that ended up going over.
And we've also had issues with, are they working in parks? Are they working in buildings? And then being able to pay them and balance all that back out. So we'll probably be moving some money from buildings and parks into payroll for streets because they've been working in those jobs, but paid out of streets. Is that right?
We're actually allocating as it happens. Those are slowly, but they're very minor amounts. I mean, they're like under 10,000 each for payroll, I think. But that's gonna be used by streets personnel doing those jobs. And they're tracking that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it actually comes out on their paychecks out of that. Yeah. Fire, we just juggled a lot for his fire truck that had it. So his savings got depleted this year. So.
I could dump a bunch of money in there.
And wastewater and water are getting funds from ARPA, from the county. And we just received word, I received it verbally last week that we're getting 30,000 on the repairs. That last request you talked about, Chris.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless someone has a specific question, I'm happy to. Good job.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Nice work.
Thank you.
Way to juggle.
I thought.
make it work.
I really thought we were gonna be doing big time amendments, but then started to really dig into it and, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the budget reallocation of funds for the administrative, fire, marshal, and streets departments and wastewater and water funds for fiscal year 2024.
Second. Member Whitman?
Sorry. Yes, sorry, that's on my right side.
Member Jordan, Jordan?
Yes.
Member Mahoney?
Yep.
Member Ferrero?
Yes.
Member Shea?
Yes.
Member Leggy?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight. I know it was a little longer than usual, but I think we had some good discussions. I appreciate the presentations that we got tonight. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I know. It's a lot of time in this area.
I think we're gonna have to have this guy.
It's just like.
Give that woman a back.
Yeah.
It got off the thing and we're.
I'm happy.
That is extreme.
Yeah. Problematic and not, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know.
That was not. Normally they go. And, but you really got to see a lot of things.
I know.